Most done-for-you agency owners are stuck in a cycle of high workload, low margins, and unpredictable revenue. You feel like you're growing because your revenue is going up over time. However, with every client signed, you end up adding more stress instead of profits. But the fact that you clicked on this video is kind of a good sign. I must congratulate you because it means that you're not chasing vanity metrics like number of clients, number of team, or even revenue. But instead, you understand what the agency model is really about, and that is creating profit for you to either live on or invest in other ventures. I've scaled my done for you to over 200K per month whilst maintaining over 60% net and removed myself completely from day-to-day operations. My clients have done the same. One of my clients went from 45K per month with around 10% margins to being able to have 50% net just after having a couple calls with me, all the while reducing his number of hours worked. How is that possible? Well, in this video, I'm going to break down the 6 key optimizations that's going to allow you to increase your margins by 30 to 50%, remove yourself from low-value tasks, as well as show you how to expand your team without adding more operational drag or stress or insane amounts of workload. Please pay attention because what I'm about to show you is a proven roadmap, and every single point is a direct lever that you can pull to not only increase your profitability, but also freedom. So the first thing is you need to most likely redesign your offer to optimize for maximum profitability as opposed to optimizing for the close. Most done-for-you agency owners, including yourself, are most of the time undercharging. What I mean when I say undercharging is that because you started the agency from a freelancing perspective, meaning that you are fulfilling the actual services yourself, or maybe even right now you're fulfilling the service yourself still, you typically end up charging freelancer rates, meaning that as you grow, you don't even have the margins to be able to actually outsource the work to someone who is actually highly competent. And as a result, when you scale, your quality of service diminishes and your margins take a nosedive. So let's talk about how to actually increase the margins within your offer. Well, right now, most likely in terms of your client billables, what it's going to look like is 20% of your clients will pay you roughly 50 to 80% of your revenue. The rest are going to be clients that, let's say it was your first client that you basically started with on a free trial and they really can't afford to pay you more, and so on and so forth, to your most recent client being kind of like the highest paying, let's say. The key to building a high margin agency is to start acquiring and firing your lowest paying clients and slowly raising your average billable. What this is going to allow you to do is to actually have the gross margin to be able to start outsourcing the work. Because most likely, if you're 20 to 30K per month right now, the work is still being half done by your team, half done by you. You're probably juggling a bunch of the client relationships and basically acting as customer success manager, whereas really you should be transitioning yourself into being a manager of your fulfillment team as opposed to directly client facing yourself. However, the key to raising your prices is not just going to the client and just being like, yo, like, I know you were paying me $500, but you either pay me 2K or sayonara. That's not how it works. Instead, what you want to do is you want to switch from a deliverables-based pricing to a slightly more performance-based pricing. What do I mean when I say slightly more performance-based? I don't mean necessarily you have to take a percentage of revenue. It can be fixed retainers too. What you just need to do is you need to tweak the way in which you're selling. So for example, if you're, let's say, a video editing agency, you're essentially going to be competing with freelancers that will happily take $50 to edit a singular video, right? But how do you go from charging, let's say, $50 to edit a video to $250? Instead of being just a video editor, let's say, you have to add a performance element to it in the sense that, let's say, you're a retention algorithm specialized editor that knows exactly what are the top performing trends to make a video that actually retains. So you help with not only the editing aspect, but also you apply your knowledge into the video editing, allowing the performance to be much higher than someone that just charges a standard $50 per edit. You see what I mean? So that essentially is going to be the thing that helps you unlock pricing power. And it all has to do with you tying your offer to either something that is performance driven or outcome driven. Another way for you to increase your margins is to go more up market or upstream. This concept actually just comes from SaaS. It's been around for many, many years, but it's essentially the idea that you just go after richer clients, long story short. So for example, if in your marketing messaging, you're saying, hey, we can add another 20K per month to your e-commerce brand through email marketing, guess what's going to happen? You're only going to be able to attract small brands with that marketing message. So yes, you might be able to book in a ton of meetings, but what's going to happen on these meetings is everyone is going to be unqualified to pay you, let's say, 5K per month or something. And as a result, you kind of develop this limiting belief that your service is not worth, let's say, 5, 6K per month. So by changing your marketing message, you can actually attract a more qualified group of individuals. So for example, instead of saying, hey, we'll add 20K per month, you can say, hey, we can add 20%, right? Because a brand that's doing 3 million a month would be interested in a 20% increase, whereas 20K for them is just a really, really bad day. So by going upstream, you unlock a new demographic of potential buyers that have more spending power in the first place, meaning they will naturally value your services more because the value in which you are able to deliver them goes up. And lastly, in order to create a high margin offer, what you need to do is actually lean out your services a bit more. Meaning, the most common problem I see with agency owners that are between that 20 to 50K per month range, or even up to like 1 to 200K per month that have low margins, is actually because they just have way too much complexity in their org chart, and they don't realize that actually 30% of their team are completely useless anyway. So 30% of the payroll they can cut immediately, as well as a lot of the things that they're doing for the clients ultimately are not actually generating any value for them. And as a result, if they just got rid of that portion of their service, the client wouldn't really care in the first place. I promise you, if you guys audited your exact service, like one of my students, William, his communication was airtight, right? Like his reporting was insane. However, the problem is his clients didn't even read the reports because ultimately they don't actually move the needle forward. But for every single one of his clients, he was spending 2 or 3 hours creating these reports in the first place, and that massively restricted his team capacity. So what I did with William was I literally just audited his entire service, and I was like, listen, bro, you can slash this, and this, and your client experience is going to remain the exact same. So why don't you do it? And as soon as he did, he was able to free up like 20 hours of his week, which was absolutely insane. That's what I mean by leaning out your service. And if you do these things, you should already have really, really high margins. And we can move on to step 2, which is understanding how to acquire customers without spending any money. You see, the problem is most agencies are relying on either outbound prospecting or paid ads. However, if you've done cold emails, you'll know for a fact that cold emails just 3 years ago even was so much easier compared to what it is today. Your book rates was higher, your competition was lower. Back then, honestly, you could just request a call and you'll be able to book meetings with enough volume. Whereas now you have to send looms, lead magnets, consistently follow up, you have to do free work on the front end. Now, what if I told you there was a much better way to do this? A way in which you can attract inbound clients on a weekly basis that are requesting to work with you, as opposed to you needing to pull down your pants and spread your cheeks to sell yourself to them. It would be pretty nice. And the key here is to build automated inbound marketing systems as well as strategic partnerships. The first thing is to leverage and create domain-specific knowledge content. I mean your how-to tutorials for not only beginners, but also intermediate as well as advanced people. Essentially just free training to help people deliver the service that you're selling as a done for you independently. You might be thinking, well, wouldn't that just create a bunch of competition and in-house teams for myself? Kinda, but I'll tell you where the magic lies. And you can see that I've personally did this for like 3 years now through my own personal channel. So the magic lies in the fact that at some point, you're gonna come across a client where the agency that they're using is gonna have followed your tutorials, and you're gonna be able to pick apart exactly what you can do better because that tutorial was from like 2 years ago, let's say. But more importantly, also, as you make these tutorials, you're kind of like filling a bucket one drop at a time in terms of expanding your brand presence all over the internet. Another example of type of domain-specific knowledge content is when you make case studies and publish reports around how you were able to take a client from X to Z. And with these types of domain-specific content, it's gonna help you position yourself as an industry expert, and over time, it's actually gonna build a brand for yourself, attract people that you would never even dream of working together with. The reason why I named content to be the first thing is because it also helps giving you additional partnerships. So for example, at my agency, we partner with some of the world's largest e-commerce coaches, and as a result, they give us all of their top students as well as their top mastermind clients. Because as they scale, they get more case studies, and all of their case studies comes on as a client for us. And the reason I was able to secure these types of partnerships is simply because I was already known in the space. I have an insane domain for my service, emailmarketer.com. I have the largest Klaviyo channel within my niche. I have done collaborations with people like Human Gaji. My videos and tutorials are on SaaS pages. They're featured on as onboarding systems for 7- and 8-figure Shopify tools. And as a result, over time, it just compounds into so much social proof so that when I open up discussions for a partnership with anyone, my competence is never put into question. Partnerships are a phenomenal way to acquire clients with no upfront costs, unlike cold email, where the cost is not only the infrastructure, but also your time and attention, or paid ads, where you have to actually record content, launch the content, and spend a shit ton of money just to break even. And lastly, once you have content locked in, partnership partnerships locked in. The final thing is to create and install a referral journey inside of your client experience. Now, if you want to hear me explain exactly what things like referral triggers and how to actually build this into your customer experience, I'll link a video down in the description below that covers exactly how to build a killer referral system that consistently turns one customer into two, and two customer into four, and four into eight. Now that you've built an automated acquisition system, the third thing to do is to actually streamline your fulfillment as well as reduce overhead. Your fulfillment should not scale exponentially while your revenue scales linearly. What do I mean by that? Well, one of the traps that agency owners fall into is they think that as they scale, they need more team members. Which, yes, it's true, but the way they think about needing team members is they think that, oh, I need more managers, I need more this, I need more that. And for you in your head right now to go from, let's say, 20K to 40K, you don't think you just need to double your team. You think you need to 2.5x your team. You see what I mean? Because you need to introduce managers, extra additional capacity and that kind of stuff, etc., etc. When really, for example, for us to go from 200K to 400K, let's say, I don't even need to double my team. I could just like 1.8x my team, meaning that as I scale, my margins actually improve. So if you're hearing this and you can't really relate to my scenario, here's how to shift from your model to mine. First things first, you need to turn your client results process into a standardized pattern with very, very little deviation for your team to follow. Meaning that the service that you deliver for one client needs to be a very similar service that you deliver for another client. Because where you get deviations, as you scale, they become bigger and bigger inefficiencies. And as a result, you need more people, more manpower, more overheads from a salary perspective in order to actually facilitate this. So make sure your service delivery systems are absolutely bulletproof, but also everything is documented as you scale. So for example, if you onboard a new team member and she hits you with a question that you've never answered before, make sure that when you're answering it, you're recording it as a loom and starting to build what's known as your knowledge base. And over time, what's going to happen is every single question that comes up, you're always going to be able to refer them to something from the knowledge base, as opposed to re-explain the same things over and over again. Now, the reason why I mentioned earlier that for me to double my revenue, I actually end up increasing my margins is because partially, not entirely, of AI and being able to build automations that perform manual tasks. So what do I mean by this? As you guys scale, the manual tasks ends up inevitably piling up. However, some of these manual tasks are so brain dead, they could literally be replaced with make.com or Zapier. So as you guys scale, these tasks would pile up and you can just eliminate a massive amount of your day-to-day workload by building automations for these micro tasks. So an example of a micro task might be check the copy my team has written. If we were to migrate onto, let's say, ClickUp, we can automate this entire process and just have AI manually check it as soon as the copy is written. You see what I mean? And over time, that's going to help free up the strategist capacity. Another example would be things like having automated WhatsApp messages to people that book in a sales call with us. So rather than if they book in at 3 a.m. and waiting 4 hours to send the first touch point, we can actually start automating that and as a result improve the show rates without needing to hire a setter or a triager or something along those lines. So actually, as you guys scale, the smaller tasks pile up and it starts making sense to start actually automating those mundane tasks as opposed to doing them yourselves. You can also outsource non-essential services to external agencies and service vendors. So for example, all of our accountants are independent agencies as opposed to freelance contractors, because with these independent agencies, they're going to be insured, they're going to do everything properly, as well as they have compliance teams and that kind of stuff to make sure that we're taken care of. You can also start creating pre-built assets for service delivery. Let's say in video editing, there's a very specific style of intro that just cooks every time when it comes to retention. You could just build out the editing template of that and auto apply it to all of your clients. And you could just create variations of, let's say, color grading packs and that kind of stuff. And over time, it's going to reduce operational drag, allowing you to scale your team linearly as opposed to exponentially relative to your revenue. The fourth thing to do is to overcome your fear of raising your prices. I'm going to show you how to do this without actually losing any clients. You know you need to charge more, and you know that there are people in your market charging 2 or 3x the amount that you are. But why are you not doing it? It's because you inherently fear that if you try to raise your prices, your clients are going to leave. Whereas the reality is your clients do not pay you for your effort. They pay you for the results. So here's exactly how I raise the prices on my existing clients. Effectively, you want to create it as an upsell. If let's say a client is paying you $1,000 a month and you want to get them to pay you $2,000 a month. One example of doing this is to figure out where in your service and in your deliverables are they getting the highest ROI, and then just doubling the volume of that specific thing and then charging them double the price for it. If you're listening to this and you're making anywhere from, let's say, 20 to 30K per month as an agency owner, what's mostly going to happen is right now, let's say you have 5 clients, the top 2 you can afford to keep because their pricing is actually pretty solid, but the bottom first three clients you've ever signed, you basically just closed them because you didn't want to be broke and you just took the money because they could afford to pay you. And as a result, they're probably really low quality clients. Even if you try to deliver more value, they're just most likely not really going to take it, either because they have a shit product with very, very low product market fit, or they have a ton of limiting beliefs or like capital restrictions that's preventing them from scale, or they just don't really want to scale in the first place. In those cases, even if you provided more, they're not going to be able to afford to pay you in the first place. So let me just tell you the painful truth. You need to get rid of those clients. However, there's a very tactical way in which to do this. Instead of just saying to a client, hey, listen, you either pay me this price or you... What you want to do, fire your lowest paying client if you do not have time for client acquisition. If you have time for client acquisition, then keep all of your clients, use your spare time to acquire clients, and the next client that you sign, make sure that it's going to be at a price point that is scalable for you long term. Once you sign this client, you then approach the lowest paying client and be like, listen, you can either pay me this price or we're going to have to stop working together because I'm literally at capacity and people are offering me this price to work together. And right now, I'll be honest, as much as I love working with you, you are my lowest paying client. At this point, they're either going to agree, they're going to pay you that much and then leave within 2 or 3 months, or they're just going to leave right away, in which case you plug in the new client. The reason why you want to do it like that is because you want to shift your average billable per month up over time towards that scalable amount. Once you hit that scalable amount, then you can actually afford to outsource with good margins in mind. My client was doing the service delivery with one freelancer. The problem was his time was capped to the point where he was working from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. 6 days a week. As a result, he literally did not have time to go out and acquire more clients. And what's happening is his top 3 clients was on average paying him $3K per month, whereas the lowest bottom paying clients, one of them was even paying them $1,200 a month. Now with his service, it's incredibly hard to outsource for anything less than $1,500 to $2K per month, so I came to learn. Meaning that even his highest paying clients were not really paying him enough, because even if he were to outsource it, the best margin he could possibly have is 50% gross, which is not really high enough to scale at 40% net or more margins whilst you're growing the agency. What we did together to 2x his average contract value was I told him to immediately fire his lowest paying 2 clients, use that spare time to focus on acquiring more clients, and over time plug and play his existing clients. Over a period of 4 months, we were able to replace the remaining 3 lowest paying clients, and with the 2 highest paying, one of them actually ascended to a slightly higher plan, and as a result, his average billable went from, I think it was like 2.2K all the way up to 3.4. This gave him room to scale, and now he's just growing month on month from there on out. The 5th step to increasing your profitability as an agency owner is to build a performance-driven team that is super lean. What do I mean by this? In the beginning, you just need hands to do the work for you. I can't remember which book had this, but I learned this from my friend Publio. He was like, in an organization, you either have cannons or you have ammunition. Basically, the idea is the cannon is the thing that fires people in a specific direction, whereas the ammunition is like the hands that is actually needed to do the work itself. So how this can be extrapolated into your agency, most of the time, as you guys grow in the beginning, you end up hiring VAs because there's just like a bunch of little odd tasks that you need doing. As a result, as you guys scale, you try to train these VAs up into performing much more specialized roles. And as a result, instead of needing, let's say 5 people to fulfill 10 clients, let's say, or 20 clients, you end up needing 20 people to fulfill 20 clients, because these are just like low IQ VAs that cannot think for themselves and need everything templatized. Instead, you want to get rid of these people over time and rebuild your team with just the right amount and the right mix of cannons versus ammunition. So for example, as we scale, I've realized that as an individual, you can't really effectively manage more than 5 to 10 people max, depending on the role. So we were able to introduce highly experienced managers into the organization to help with the leadership and the day-to-day running of things, which not only has freed up my time entirely, but now over time, because we introduced another layer of management underneath my COO, his time is a lot more free now to actually work on the agency, on the service delivery, as opposed to inside the day-to-day. There's also more tactical things like implementing asynchronous communication protocols. So for example, reducing your meeting times by using things like Fireflies to provide meeting summaries and notes, or having a lot of pre-recorded SOPs and having a very extensive knowledge base to minimize communication. I bet if you're running, let's say 30K per month and you have any more than 6 people on the team, I bet you can cut down to 5 to 6 people and instantly raise your profits by 20 to 30%. By doing these things, one of my clients were able to literally cut their team down from 12 people down to 5 and double their profits within the same month. And lastly is to maximize the lifetime value of every single client that walked through the door. If you're a done-for-you agency that sells one-time packages with very minimal recurring revenue, you are in danger. Because the thing is, if you don't have contracts in place or monthly recurring revenue, you can't actually predictably scale your team because most likely the demand for your service is going to be highly seasonal. A great example of this is landing page agencies. With landing page agencies, what typically happens is they have a really, really dry summer, but as soon as Q4 hits, everyone and their mums and dogs and cats suddenly start needing landing pages. And as a result, you end up getting a flood of revenue and you scale your team, jam it with a bunch of freelancers, but as soon as Q4 is over, your margins diminish significantly. And because it's that lack of MRR, you don't actually know how far you can push your hiring systems without dipping into the really dangerously low margin territories. So here's how to actually turn your one-time payment services into lifelong recurring revenue. So effectively, if you look at your existing service, right? Let's take the landing page example. Rather than building things for a one-time fee, if you get truly, truly excellent with your service, you can charge a licensing fee, let's say, to continuously using the product. It might be a percentage of ad spend that you run against the funnel, or it could be a percentage of revenue generated on the funnel, or it could just be attaching affiliate links onto the funnel so that way you get paid as an affiliate as they run this funnel with their ads. So that's an example of turning a one-time payment service into a longer term one. Obviously, you might need to drop your front-end cash collected, but it's going to add a lot more longevity to your service itself. Another way is to make people subscribe for a set number of deliverables. For example, if you see a client on average ordering 3 pages from you on a monthly basis, you can offer that client saying, hey, if you hop on retainer with us, we'll give you up to 4 pages per month for the price of 3. You see what I mean? So you essentially turn a customer that sometimes comes and spends with you into a customer that is paying you on a monthly basis, and as a result, getting more and more credits to build pages with you guys, but also it forces them to use the service more often. You can also upsell to higher margin backend services. So for example, let's say as soon as someone comes on board, you onboard them onto a suite of SaaS products that let's say total up to 1K. Obviously, these SaaS products needs to create tangible value for the clients as well. But as soon as you onboard them, you can take a percentage of commissions from that onboarding, effectively increasing your average billable per client by a set amount. And that profit is just completely free money because you're essentially outsourcing the fulfillment and even the closing, to be honest, to a third-party vendor. For example, we are one of Klaviyo's platinum partners, and as such, we get commission for every client that we actually manage for them. Funnily enough, I actually didn't know this. It's been maybe like, I don't know, 3 or 6 months that I didn't log into my partner portal, and when I logged in, I had like 18K of payments that were just pending towards in my name. So I just needed to add my bank details, and I got paid 18 Gs for doing absolutely nothing. That's a whole Rolex, bro. Like, don't sleep on partnerships, referrals, as well as affiliate commissions. You're gonna be able to add roughly another 10% to your average monthly billable just by implementing these things alone. So yeah, this is the exact 6-step framework that allow me to maintain really, really high net margins with fantastic scale with my done-for-you agency. And if you're a done-for-you agency owner wanting to implement this into your own business, you can click on the video on screen where I show you guys exactly how I mastered the referral game that allows me to generate tens of thousands of dollars in new monthly recurring revenue from word of mouth and partnerships alone. Thanks for watching. I hope you got value, and I'll see you in the next one.